All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 14 with Max Barr. We are recapping Sunday's Elite Eight action in the SEC. Purdue knocks off Tennessee, and we'll get to that here shortly. But first, let's tell you, as always, about our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online, the tournament is here, as you know, and you can continue to place odds, and you get the lines, info, and everything on every game and every round right up until the national championship. So, a couple more games to go before we get there. You can access the most up-to-minute wagering information anytime from your desktop or mobile devices. So head on over to BetOnline today. Get in on the action. Remember, use that promo code BLEAV, B-L-E-A-V. 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit if you use that code. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Max. Just like this is one of those where I know a lot of Tennessee fans are either not going to be watching or they're going to be watching with some frustration because Purdue does knock off Tennessee 72-66 in this game. I mean, it's pretty clear who the two players were that stood out the most in this contest. That was Zach Edey, who finished with 40, and Dalton Knecht, who finished with 37. I mean, from that standpoint, if you're like, you get two teams like this meeting in the Elite Eight, chance to go to the Final Four, you want your best players to have your best performances. And certainly these two did from a production standpoint. There's no question about it. But I know Tennessee fans are frustrated with other things in particular. When it comes to Zach Edey, probably. He did shoot 14 of 22 from the free throw line, racked up 16 rebounds. I mean, 40 and 16. I mean, that we brought up, those are the kind of numbers you've seen this season from Zach Edey, and he managed to work out in Purdue's favor again in terms of just his ability to make that kind of impact on the game. And obviously, it did not help either. We were texting about this early on. Jonas Edey just probably had a game to forget, and that was what we said probably would not need to happen if Tennessee was going to win this game. And he winds up with, I would say, Max, probably his worst game of the season, which, again, it's like the odds of that, but, I mean, that's how it unfolded. So,
Yeah, unfortunate for Edu that it came in this game. Because I know he's hurting right now, probably thinking about it. And before I dive into the game, this one stings. This one stings and while every SEC team that lost, it stung for me. This one stings a little bit more just because of how much SEC basketball these guys have played. I mean, Josiah Jordan James, Vescovy, been watching these guys forever. And then even just DK. I think I watched every single DK game this year. Um, so I'm gonna miss this team. This was one of Rick Barnes' best teams. It was his most fun team, I would say. They played the fastest tempo they've ever played. So I'm gonna miss this team. It was a fun year for Tennessee basketball. Diving into the game a little bit, I know what Tennessee fans are here for. I know what the elephant in the room is. So I'll get into it a little bit. I'll get into it. Zach Edey is a phenomenal player. There's a reason why Connor Vanover is the same height and doesn't average Zach Edey numbers. It's because Zach Edey is phenomenal. He's got amazing footwork, amazing physicality. I mean, he's 300 pounds at 7'4". He's no twig. He's got a great touch around the rim, good positioning, really knows the game well, always in the right spot. He's good. He is really good. And on those 22 free throw attempts that everyone's going to be, even myself, were upset about, probably 18 of them were legit and probably could have missed one or two to make it 22. I'm taking nothing away from his offensive game. Phenomenal offensive player. The problem where I have is all of the positioning, rebounding, loose ball fouls that just do not get called for him. Just do not get called. I'm talking the elbow clearing out Awaka on the rebound, the push in the back on Adu on the rebound, the foul on Awaka on the rebound where he just happens to fall down and gets a foul called on him. It's like you gotta call the game fair both ways. And if Edey has 2-3 fouls, well, now he's got to go out for a minute or two. And I mean, we saw how quick a run can happen when Edey goes on the bench. So that's where my big frustration was. It was not with Edey getting his foul called. Pretty much every single one of those were warranted just you got to hack the guy. He's 7'4" and huge. But it's the other end. How he played 30 minutes without a foul being called until his first foul. I'm like, what are we watching here? Are we watching the same game? And so that's where my frustration came in. It was not with his fouls that were hacked on him. It was the lack of calls that he did not get called for. I'm like, you got to call it the same way both ways. So that's where my issue was. But I mean, hey, even with that, Tennessee had chances. I mean, Ziegler went 1 for 8 from 3. He should have made at least a few of those. There were some open looks. Down the stretch, Purdue just executed better, where Tennessee was kind of like, DK, take us home. DK, take us home. Purdue kind of had a little bit more, I don't know, purpose to their offense, if you want to put it that way. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the legend Tony Patelis himself said on Twitter, and I told him I had to do a double take when he replied to this because he said, great game. There was no sarcasm. There was nothing. It was just a straight-up response. But he did say something that I think was completely true. He's like, I think Knecht just ran out of gas. Like, that's what it looked like. I mean, all the pressure. And again, like, it became one of those games. And, of course, we did mention that a couple times throughout the season. People are saying if there's one thing that it's going to worry about Tennessee is whenever it does have to be all on Dalton Knecht, can they get enough around him? And they just didn't get enough around him in this game, plain and simple. But to get back to what you said a second ago, this is what the impact of the game. I mean, we mentioned Edey, and again, we're not, just for the record, if anyone new watching, we're not knocking Edey. We were talking about him as a sneaky SEC Player of the Year candidate this year and any other year minus one where he features Dalton Knecht, Mark Sears, Broom, Reeves, all those guys. But he had a tremendous season. Just did not have, a couple of good games here back to back in the tournament. But it's not just him, though, when you think about kind of the impact that Edey had on this game, because it's Edey, Estrella, Awaka. So they're 3 front court guys. They combined for 4 points. I think they went 2 of 8 from the floor. They went 0 of 0 from the free throw line.
Yep.
So, none of your front court guys attempt a single free throw. And meanwhile, they combined for 11 fouls. And so, that's a challenge. Like, if that's the numbers you give me and you're saying, is Tennessee going to win the game? I mean, 100 out of 100 times I'm saying nope. Because it's not going to happen. But again, and I know there will be frustrations, like I said, and understandable. But that is the impact that Zach Edey had on this game. It's the impact he's had on a lot of other games this season. And that puts you, I think, in a really tough spot because you're just not getting anything productive out of your front court. And again, that's where, just think about it, right? Let's say Edey scores 8 points. Let's say Awaka gets another bucket, has 4 points or something. It's just a completely, it's just, we can play the what-if game, but you're like, those could be normal numbers for those guys on any other night. Like this season, if we'd have looked at that, we wouldn't even given it a second glance, right? We'd be like, okay, yeah, Edey had 8, Awaka had 4, great. But complete non-factors, in terms of just the production element. Now, again, there were some good possessions there where they're trying to defend and they're doing all this and doing everything they can, but it's just, it's that margin for error, which we always talk about in these kind of games. I mean, Tennessee goes 13 to 36 from 2, 36%, right? And it became a situation where if they were going to win this game, it was going to all be on Dalton Knecht, and they've been in those situations before this year, but unfortunately, you just had Purdue make a couple more baskets, like you said, executed a couple. I mean, they executed how they wanted to win and how they've won all season, and and I think this is where it's going to really sting for Tennessee. And this is not taking anything away from NC State, but you're thinking if we get to the Final Four for the first time, we play a number 11 seed, which doesn't look like a number 11 seed right now. Let's just call it what it is. But
not at all.
You're still, that thought's still in your mind, right? You're still thinking that. You're like, oh boy, it could not have set up perhaps any better for us. And also, given the fact that, of course, Tennessee had already beaten NC State this season. There's a lot of things there, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough. I'm kind of torn on it, because as I'll put it this way: if I'm a Purdue fan, it's like I'm very proud of my team. I love my team, but every single game my team plays, the number one topic of conversation will be the referees. And it's just like it rubs me the wrong way. It just rubs me the wrong way. It's like, well, now I know that the number one topic of conversation between NC State and Purdue while that game's going on is DJ Burns' fouls. That's going to be the main story is the fouls. And every time Purdue plays, the number one story is going to be the fouls. It's not going to be about the actual basketball. And that's where I get like frustrated. It's such a referee heavy game. It's just like it's painful on the eyeballs to watch sometimes. It's like, oh my god, like can we just have two possessions where the whistle doesn't get blown? And that's where my frustration comes in. But nonetheless, Purdue Purdue gave Tennessee chances to come back in that game. There were open shots. I mean, talk about all the free throw line mid ranges that the amount of jumpers Knecht missed from there, they do miss from there, and even floaters that Ziegler missed. Like against that drop coverage against Edey, those are the shots you got to hit. You got to hit that free throw line mid range. And Tennessee didn't hit it yesterday. So um, props to Purdue, executed their defensive game plan. Um, and yeah, that's a wrap on a great season for Tennessee. Just quick looking forward to next year. You got four potential seniors to anchor the team: Meshack, Edey, Ziegler, and Gainey. Um, that would be a pretty fine core there. Um,
You're telling me that Josiah Jordan James and Santiago Vescovi do not have another year of eligibility? I mean, they've only
that's
been
why this
playing for
one
10
stings.
years at this point, right?
That's why this one stings.
Man, I know. Like, it does feel like that's what we said. And that's, yeah, you put it the best part. It's when these guys decided to come back. I mean, we thought the James one was surprising. Like, it was, I think that's where we were looking at this team. We're like, man, it is Final Four bust with Tennessee when you think about all the guys that are coming back. And remember, this is within the context of like us not knowing that Dalton Knecht's going to be
Yeah,
Dalton Knecht, right?
yeah.
And ultimately, it just did not. Yeah, I mean, one step short
Mm,
of the goal. And yeah, it does like because again, those guys we were so high on this Tennessee team. Again, I bet if you go back and watch our preseason preview on Tennessee, we did not spend a lot of time talking about Dalton Knecht at all.
yeah.
We probably brought him up as like, hey, Rick Barnes likes him. I can remember the comments Barnes said before the season about how, he has something we haven't had in terms of like the different ways he can score. But, you're like, okay, that's just coaches say that. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
going to say, oh, we brought this guy in because he's terrible. Like, they're never going to say that, right? So they're always going to tell you. But we kept looking. We're like, think about all the combined games that Ziegler, James, Vescovi have played in the SEC and how many big games they played in. Yeah, and now, like you mentioned, it's just going to be wild because you're just thinking, man, these guys are just going to keep playing, right? Like they're always going to be there because it feels like they've been there forever now. But yeah, I mean, I know this one will sit for a while with Tennessee fans. There's no question about it. Like I said, it you take it a step further, it quiets the Rick Barnes critics, I would hope, because what could Rick Barnes have done any differently
Yeah.
in that game? So if there's anybody out there that wants to criticize Rick Barnes, I did not that did not come into my mind one time while watching that game.
No.
Um,
He actually
I
coached a
just
really
think
good game, I think, with Estrella. The move
I was
to
going to say
Estrella was great.
they did like they tried everything,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes that's all you can do. And because look, even if you go back to the first game these two teams played, we brought up some of this in the preview, but like the themes were the same, really.
Yeah.
I mean, Adu had 5 points in the first game, played 13 minutes, fouled out. We talked about that. Owaka, 6 points, played 13 minutes, fouled out. Estrella played 8 minutes, 3 fouls. So the theme was the exact same the first time these two teams played back in November. Yeah, and you tried to find ways to make it different. This time, it just did not happen. It played out in somewhat of a similar fashion, and the score line was eerily similar, right? 71-67 the first time, 72-66 this time. So the difference was, I guess, Knecht had a little bit more help, but he also didn't, he didn't score 37 the first time. He scored 16. So, yeah. But nonetheless, Dalton Knecht, I see people trolling him on Twitter and all this because it's what happens on Twitter. Like, there's no way Tennessee's even close in this game if Knecht does not just go off. Sure, he missed some shots, but like I said, I do think just the stamina aspect of like just doing all this throughout the course of this game. At some point, it's just like those jump shots don't fall, and missed a couple down the stretch, but my goodness, they're not even close to this game. If he doesn't make the plays he did, a special season, one of the best individual seasons we've seen in the SEC in a while, and it's wild to say. Like I mentioned, you've got another guy for another team that's now in the Final Four in the SEC that's done the same thing, and so I hope people recognize and I know Tennessee fans don't want to hear about Alabama, but it's just like Dalton Knecht and Mark Sears. My goodness, like these two guys.
Yeah.
What they've done this season, they will. I mean, it'll go down as all-time special seasons in SEC basketball with what these guys have done. And so, props to Dalton Knecht, and we'll see how Tennessee can build off of this. Obviously transfer portal, all that kind of stuff. Couldn't tell you what the roster is going to look like next year. That's the way it works these days. But plenty of momentum for the program still, nonetheless.
Before we wrap up, I want to end with one quick thought, and I will die on this throne. I will die on this throne. Can we stop with the ex-coach has not done it in March yet, so he won't?
Of course.
No coach has ever won the national championship until he's won it.
Yeah. Remember when Dan Hurley wasn't?
What was it?
So remember when Dan Hurley couldn't get, or whatever, right?
Hurley never been past the Sweet 16 last year. That was the narrative. Well, look, they're
could be the favorite to be the two-time defending champs here. So,
Matt Painter. Oh, they always choke. They'll never make it. They're in the Final Four playing an 11 seed. I hate that argument that a coach is a fraud in March, because every coach in the whole world is a fraud in March until they're not. That's the dumbest argument ever. I hope that people will give Rick Barnes a little bit more respect after this year. Hope. They won't, but I will.
I thought he coached a great tournament again. I thought he got the most he could get out of this, knowing there were still offensive limitations and knowing that in this particular game there just were things that he could probably not control. And so, so the furthest they've been in the Rick Barnes era at Tennessee to the Elite Eights, and we'll see if they can build off of that here moving forward. We'll have it all covered, of course, during the offseason here. Max and I will be covering SEC basketball sort of like we do during the season. We'll be looking at every transfer. We'll be talking about some key storylines. Yeah, we'll actually be doing probably even more. We got 500 transfers to talk about probably. So, we'll be doing that. So hit that subscribe button. We'll kind of we'll have interviews and stuff with coaches, players, all sorts of stuff coming this offseason. And, of course, guys, we will be picking up our football content. So you can hit that subscribe button. A lot of Tennessee football stuff coming up here over the next couple of weeks as we start to really dive into football, so and baseball as well. That time. It's that time. So we appreciate you guys watching this season, your supports of all the games. There's still one SEC team left. I know Tennessee fans probably not be too thrilled to check into our content.
Rally round.
It's not going to happen. But we appreciate you guys. And again, you probably won't be following our Final Four coverage, but we just want to say thanks for following all of our stuff for all the other teams this season. So, again, we appreciate you watching. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern.